Part 70. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yuzu. Chapter 693. Fan Zijin couldn't even face Xiao Xia when he was angry, so he could only put on a face outside that no strangers should enter. After learning that Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia sent Princess Dolly away, he just snorted to show that he knew, and didn't show up in person. Qi Heiran was still in the barracks, so the officials of Zhu took Fan Zijin as a benchmark. Seeing that he didn't show up, those officials who wanted to show up immediately turned off, and only asked the family members to go see him off. The officials didn't think that Fan Zijin was deliberately snubbing Princess Dolly, but they just thought that Fan Zijin was concerned about Duan Yuking's status, so he didn't want to get too close to the concubine in the harem. The highest magistrate in Zhu is the magistrate of the 4th rank. Although the officials below have the intention to please Duan Yuking, the future concubine, they dare not make it too obvious. After all, Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia are still standing there. Especially Mu Yangling, I heard that she has a good relationship with the Empress. Everyone dare not please the concubine Xian, but offend the Empress. Therefore, this time the send-off seemed very low-key, and a group of women sent Princess Dolly's guards out of the city. But it's also very grand, because it's just female relatives. The carriage occupies the entire pipeline, and the 10-mile-long pavilion is directly filled with people. When Mu Yangling sent Princess Dolly away and looked back, he was shocked. All the people who cheered were carriages and human heads. It is even more grand than the trip of the national leaders. Mu Yangling twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "There are so many officials in our Zhu." Li Chun laughed and said, "Your Majesty, I don't know, the officials and family members of the prefectures and counties under Zhu have all come to join in the fun. Although they can't come in front of them, they are satisfied just by taking a look outside. Ulala is full of human heads, what can you see?" Mu Yangling turned back to look for Xiao Xia, helped her by the hand and said, "You can come with me in a carriage." Xiao Xia was a little tired from standing all morning, and didn't bother to walk over, so she nodded and said, "Okay." Mu Yangling helped her into the carriage. Seeing that her hands were trembling slightly and her forehead was covered with sweat, she frowned. After getting in the carriage, she wiped her sweat with a handkerchief and asked, "Is the medicated diet prescribed by Dr. Wang still good? Are you eating?" Xiao Xia nodded, "I've been eating all the time. The child has behaved a lot recently, and it's not too uncomfortable anymore." "Then why are you always sweating? I see that your hands and feet are shaking after standing for more than an hour. How can you have a baby like this?" But Xiao Xia didn't take it seriously and said, "Isn't it like this when you are pregnant? Plus my health is not good." Mu Yangling was silent, and after returning home, he called Imperial Physician Wang to inquire about Xiao Xia's physical condition. Wang Tai thought for a while and said, "Princess, although Madame's body is weak, she is not so weak." The official once suggested that Madame should go for a walk in the garden more often, but Madame's fetal breathing has been unstable, so she was very scared. Walking outside, always lying down, suddenly tired, it is inevitable that some night sweats. Mu Yangling nodded slightly, "Thank you, Imperial Physician Wang, and please prescribe a few more medicinal meals suitable for your wife. This time you will be tired after returning to Beijing." Mu Yangling asked someone to invite Xiaonani after Wang Tai left, and asked about Xiao Xia's work schedule in detail. Xiaonani didn't hide it from Mu Yangling. Ling's worry, sighed, "I also know my mother's worry, why don't I worry about it? But our wife is weak, and the fetus has been unstable. She is worried when she goes outside. The servant looks at her like that, and she is also worried that there is something wrong under her feet." She fell steadily, so she never dared to force her to go out for a walk in the past. When Princess Duan was there, our wife always came in a sedan chair, and we asked someone to carry it to the door. She could still walk a few steps in the room. Now that Princess Duan is leaving, our wife I don't want to move anymore. This kind of fear also existed when Mu Yang was pregnant with a cub, and he walked very carefully every step of the way, for fear of disturbing the child in his stomach. Mu Yangling thought for a while, and said, "Let me think of a way. You go back first, and don't persuade her too hard, lest she gets annoyed and won't want to move around. It's only been 5 months, it's still early." Grandma Xia nodded. Mu Yangling asked Fan Zijin if Xiao Xia must go to Beijing. "She is not in good health, and she is not good at bumps, but if we stay here, we will all go to Beijing, and I am afraid that there will be no host in the house when she gives birth." Fan Zijin said indifferently, "She is going to Beijing, I will make arrangements for you to leave early, walk slowly on the road, and we can follow behind." Mu Yangling knew it in his heart, so he went to find Xiao Xia the next day, and told her directly, "My cousin is worried about you staying in Zhezhou alone, so I will take you with me no matter what, but even though you are in a stable position now I'm still in poor health. I'm tired after standing for more than an hour. How can I go on my way? So my cousin asked me to take care of you. Now I'll get used to it in advance, and then I'll take care of my body. Let's go." After finishing speaking, she whispered in her ear, "I see my cousin is distressed, and I would rather we go late than tire you." Xiao Xia blushed, and pushed her when she heard the words, "You can't talk nonsense, if the censor knows that you will be impeached." Mu Yangling smiled and said, "It's just a private conversation between the two of us, how could she know? Could it be that you will tell she?" "Nonsense." Xiao Xia gave her a look, thought for a while and asked, "Then what should I do?" "I've made all the arrangements. Dr. Wang changed a few medicinal meals for you. You should eat according to the prescription first. I'll pick you up every morning and walk around in the yard. We'll leave after I pack up my luggage." Xiao Xia nodded, expressing that everything was subject to Mu Yangling's arrangement. In the early morning of the next day, Mu Yangling took the little bear to look for Xiao Xia. After the three of them had breakfast together, they walked in the garden. After walking for about a quarter of an hour, Mu Yangling stopped to rest. After 2 times, the little bear was not happy, he broke away from Mu Yangling's hand, and rushed out like a small cannonball to have fun on his own. Xiao Xia said enviously, "Little bear has a great body, and I don't know what's going on with this one in my stomach. To be able to toss like this, the body must be in great shape." Xiao Xia smiled, took Mu Yangling's hand and said, "Aling, I have something to ask of you." "You say?" "I heard that I want to put some clothes of a boy with a lot of blessings under the pillow so that I can have a son. I want to borrow some clothes from Xiaoxiang's childhood." Xiao Xia touched her belly and said sadly, "My belly is pointed." "Yes, they all said it was the pregnancy of a girl. I asked Grandma Xia. Although Grandma Xia said that this fetus must be the young master, she turned around and persuaded me that it would be better to bloom first and then bear fruit. I am not wrong, I like girls, and my daughter is my mother's close-fitting padded jacket, and they are all my own flesh and blood, how can I not feel pain? But I still want a boy first, and I have been married to your cousin for 3 years. For all the pressure he shouldered for me, I should give him a son." Mu Yangling was silent for a while, and asked, "Is there still time for the pillow?" Xiao Xia smiled slightly and said, "Just to have more hope." "Okay, I'll clean it up for you when I get back." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 694. As soon as Qi Heiran entered the room, he saw Mu Yangling instructing Li Shun and the others to rummage through the boxes, so he asked, "What's the matter?" When Mu Yangling looked up and saw him in black and thin, he felt distressed immediately, got up and took his hand and asked, "Why are you so thin, didn't you eat well?" Qi Heiran was very satisfied with Mu Yangling's inquisitiveness, but he couldn't show it. He pointed to the room and asked, "What are you looking for?" "Look for the clothes of little Xiang's childhood." Mu Yangling pulled him into the house, and asked someone to prepare hot water, I heard that you can give birth to a boy by sleeping on the clothes of a boy with a deep fortune, so I will find some for my cousin. Bring the bear's clothes. Chi-Heiran tilted his head, and asked, do you want my brother and I to ask for some Xiaobeo's clothes? Who in this world is blessed with Xiaobei? But his son is not bad either. Mu Yangling glanced at him, and said, how can I tell my elder brother about this kind of thing? Let me tell my sister-in-law, you go take a bath, little bear is asleep, and if he wants to wake up to see you, he must be making trouble with you again. Play. Chi-Heiran shook his head complacently, who made my son like me so much? If you don't take him around to see if he likes you, you won't see anyone for 10 days and a half. Master, this is for the sake of the future, for the whole of Daki, it is because the hair is long but the knowledge is short. Well, it's true that people with long hair have shorter knowledge. Mu Yangling glanced at him with a half smile, and said, how about we compare whose hair is longer? Chi-Heiran was stunned, glanced at Mu Yangling's hair, turned around and ran, waving his hand, and said, I'm going to wash up, and quickly call the kitchen to prepare food for my master, who is almost starving to death. When Chi-Heiran came out, the room had been cleaned up, and Li Chun and others set up a table outside, with 4 dishes and 1 soup on it. Chi-Heiran took a bite of every dish, and said dissatisfiedly, why didn't you say you made it? You came back suddenly, how could I have time? Let's eat first, I will cook for you in the evening. Only then was Chi-Heiran satisfied, and when Xiao Xiang came out rubbing his eyes, he saw his father was buried in his meal. He was overjoyed and flew towards his father. Chi-Heiran hurriedly dropped his chopsticks and caught him with one hand. Stinky boy, why are you running so fast? What are you doing? Almost hit the dining table. The little bear wrapped his arms around Chi-Heiran's neck, kissed him big on the face, and made a pop sound. Chi-Heiran's originally black face suddenly turned black and red. Even if his skin was dark, he couldn't stop the redness. Mu Yangling looked at it and laughed. Chi-Heiran roared, what have you taught the child? How decent is this kissing? Mu Yangling was not convinced. Didn't you kiss him before? Can it be the same? At that time, he was young and didn't remember anything. Besides, I was his father, so it's only natural for me to kiss him. I have never heard of a son kissing his father. When Xiao Xiang heard Chi-Heiran yelling at him and his mother, tears filled his eyes immediately, and he burst into tears with a wow because of his grievance. Why are you yelling at him? Mu Yangling pushed him, and immediately hugged the little bear, saying, he kisses you because he likes you. If one day he doesn't want to kiss you, you can cry. Chi-Heiran frowned in disgust. The little bear cried even louder, and it was useless for Mu Yangling to roar. Chi-Heiran felt distressed, he hugged him helplessly, put a black face in front of him, and said, kiss, kiss. He said with a look of disgust and closed his eyes. Little Xiang pushed his face away with a slap, turned and fell into his mother's arms, wiped away his tears, kissed his mother, and then looked at Chi-Heiran provocatively. Chi-Heiran's black face became even darker. He reached out and took his son directly from Mu Yangling's arms, kissed him on the face with a boo, and said, from now on, only fathers are allowed, not kisses your mother, you are too old to kiss your mother anymore, you know. Little bear blinked, huh? Chi-Heiran nodded seriously, you can't kiss your mother when you grow up, do you think you have grown up? Little bear struggled for a while, but still nestled in Chi-Heiran's arms as if subdued, and calmed down obediently. Anyway, he also likes his mother very much, but he prefers to grow up. Satisfied, Chi-Heiran held his son in his arms and said generously, from now on, you can kiss dad if you want. Mu Yangling rolled his eyes and said, hurry up and eat, or the food will be cold. Little bear was drooling at the meat on the table. Chi-Heiran immediately asked someone to prepare another set of bowls and chopsticks. He hadn't eaten with his son for a long time, and his son fell asleep when he came back the last 2 times, it was not done. If you want to go out again, you can see him in front of his bed. I haven't seen each other for 3 months, and Xiaoxiang's appetite has increased a lot. The father and son ate up all the food on the table like the autumn wind swept away the fallen leaves. Mu Yangling stared at the little bear's stomach worriedly. This kid ate 2 bowls at noon, and now he eats so much, can he still eat at night? Chi Heiran put down the bowl, not worried. Little bear is like us, he eats a lot. I will take him for a walk in the garden to digest his food. He can still eat 2 big bowls at night. He said it as if he had a lot of appetite and hated glory. After all, Mu Yangling felt sorry for Chi Heiran. She didn't let him take the little bear to the garden, but let him go to bed, and she would take the little bear to digest himself. Chi Heiran said in his mouth, I think it's because you are reluctant to part with your son, but turned his head and fell asleep on the couch, but it was only a few words. Little Xiang just woke up from his afternoon nap and saw his father sleeping, so he refused to go out anyway, so he squatted on the couch, touching Chi Heiran's face from time to time. Seeing him snoring, he pinched his nose with his small hands, and seeing him open his eyes, he opened his mouth and continued to snore, then giggled and laughed. Mu Yangling hurriedly grabbed his hand, lifted him down, and said in a low voice, Don't disturb Daddy, let's go out to play first, shall we? Little Xiang shook his head, holding on to the foot of the couch, and Mu Yangling had no choice but to let him sit aside. She straightened Chi Heiran's body and let him sleep better. The family of 3 stayed in the house quietly. Mu Yangling checked the list of things they had to bring. Xiaoxiang sat on the foot of the couch and played with his toys, and Chi Heiran fell asleep on the couch. When Chi Heiran woke up, it was already dark outside. He felt his chest was heavy, as if a big rock was pressed on it. When he looked at it, he found that his son had fallen asleep lying on his chest. Xiaoxiang turned his head, smash it, keep your mouth open and continue to sleep with your mouth open. Chi Heiran couldn't help but smile, his increasingly tough face softened a lot. He hugged him and turned over, put the little bear on the couch, and then got up. There was only one palace lantern with a gauze lit in the room. The light was soft yellow and orange, reflected on the person, and even the person was softened by 3 points. Chi Heiran suddenly felt his heart was at peace. I was at home with peace of mind. Chi Heiran's face softened even more. He pushed the door to go out. Li Qiu got up immediately when he saw him. My lord, are you awake? Where is the princess? The princess is in the kitchen, and this servant will go and inform the princess. Li Qiu ran away after speaking. Chi Heiran pouted, is he so scary? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 695. Mu Yangling was making braised lion heads. She did everything from kneading flour to chopping. It was considered a big dish. She didn't want to be so troublesome, but the father and son kept falling asleep. Mu Yangling wanted to wake them up, but seeing the exhaustion on Chi Heiran's brows and unwillingness to part with it, he could only let them fall asleep, and when he was free, it seemed that the food he had prepared before was not good enough. Mu Yangling simply rolled up her sleeves and made the braised lion's head herself. This was one of the 2 best dishes she made, and the other was braised pork. When Mu Yangling entered with a large plate, Chi Heiran sniffled and said, Braised lion head. Are you cooking for the master, or for that kid? Chi Heiran loves braised pork best, while Xiaoxiang loves braised lion head the most. How old are you, and you are still jealous with a child? This lion head took me a lot of effort, try it. When Mu Yangling saw that he was sitting without moving his hands, he personally held one for him and brought it to his mouth. Chi Heiran took a bite lazily, slightly surprised. You also made the lion's head. In the past, she disliked the complicated process. She had to knead the dough, chop it up, Knead it together, steam it, braise it in brown sauce, and wait for the dish to cool for a while, so she always used ready-made lion heads. Braised. Mu Yangling smiled proudly, have my skills improved? Chi Heiran nodded slightly, I can eat it. The lion's head that was braised in soy sauce in the past, even if it was not cooked enough, can still taste authentic. Now it's good, it's exactly the taste of you and Xiao Xiang. Once you taste it, you can tell that it's not a chef. Mother did it? Mu Yangling's face turned dark, you mean I didn't cook well? Chi Heiran shook his head and said, although this lion head is not authentic, it just suits my taste. Only then was Mu Yangling satisfied. Li Shun had already led people to put all the dishes on the table, served a bowl of rice for the two of them, and then led them back. The prince and princess don't like to be followed by servants when they get along, so the room was temporarily emptied. Mu Yangling turned his head to look at the couch, saw a small lump on it, and hesitated, should I wake him up? You must have dinner. Chi Heiran didn't care and said, wait until he wakes up to eat. He is a son, when can't he have dinner? Does the kitchen dare to push back? You dote on the child too much, be careful to spoil him into a dude in the future. Will master's child become a dude? Perhaps it was because he ate too much in the afternoon. Chi Heiran didn't eat much, but he just tasted every dish, and then looked at Mu Yangling in a daze. Seeing that he was not as noisy as before, Mu Yangling touched his forehead and said, are you overtired? Chi Heiran grabbed her hand, shook his head and said, no, I slept too much this afternoon, and I'm a little tired. Ask someone to remove the food. Let's talk. The husband and wife just lay down on the bed. Chi Heiran's hand became dishonest, and with a slight pull, his hand reached into Mu Yangling's lapel and rubbed it. Mu Yangling's face turned red, and he glanced nervously at the outer room. He lowered his voice and said, the child is still outside. That child sleeps like a pig and won't wake up. Chi Heiran turned over and held her down, and said vaguely with her earlobe in his mouth, you don't miss me. Mu Yangling tilted his head slightly, didn't you say you have something to say to me? Well, I want to have another child with you, preferably a daughter. Little Xiang will grow up as a brother, maybe it will be faster if you open your mouth. Mu Yangling's evasive movement paused, and he took the initiative to meet Chi Heiran's movement. Chi Heiran was overjoyed, pulled off the curtain, and put his whole body on Mu Yangling's body. Little Bear woke up in the middle of the night, and when he woke up, he found that this was not his bed, so he cried Chi Heiran hurriedly put Aling aside, hurriedly put on his clothes and ran out. Li Chun, who was trotting in, saw this and hurriedly bowed his head and retreated. Chi Heiran only looked up at her indifferently, then turned to look at his son, with a slight smile on his face, hugged him in his arms and coaxed him in a low voice, why are you crying? Isn't Daddy here? Little Xiang looked at him for a long time before realizing that it was his father, and he leaned into his arms obediently. Are you hungry? Little Bear nodded slightly, looking at him with wet eyes dependently. Chi Heiran touched his ears, turned around and ordered his servants to prepare some food. Little Bear used to have a big appetite, and he often woke up in the middle of the night looking for food. Mu Yangling always asked someone to serve him noodles, which were served with old hen soup. There were 2 eggs and a handful of vegetables lying in it. It was nutritious and balanced. Now the kitchen is called, and cooked a bowl of noodles for Xiao Xiang as usual. Chi Heiran looked at it, but his face darkened instantly. He didn't know that it was Mu Yangling's order, but he felt that the kitchen had neglected his son. You must know that he and Zijin were not favored when they were young. They ordered food in the middle of the night, and the kitchen was no matter how dissatisfied, he has to make 3 dishes and 1 soup for the 2 brothers. Could it be that his general's mansion is not as good as a 4th-rank censor's mansion? Little Xiang is still his only son. If he dares to be so negligent now, then there will be more children in the mansion. How will little Xiang be neglected? Li Chun was holding the bowl tremblingly under Chi Heiren's gloomy gaze. Little Bear was already anxiously reaching out to grab the bowl. Chi Heiren lowered his eyes, without saying anything, took the noodles and waved to make people leave. Little Xiong was very satisfied eating the noodles, and after eating a big bowl of noodles, he held his stomach and sighed in satisfaction. Chi Heiren's gloomy face softened a little, and he took his little hand and walked around the room to digest food. After all, it was late at night, and under the action of the biological clock, the little bear soon fell asleep again. Chi Heiren carried his son back to the inner room, and the three lie down and sleep together. Mu Yangling fell into a deep sleep the whole time, showing no signs of waking up. Chi Heiren put his son outside and lay in the middle by himself. Seeing Mu Yangling frowning, he kissed her on the face. Mu Yangling turned over and fell into a deep sleep again. When he woke up the next day, Chi Heiren was running in with a bear wearing a short outfit. The bear was giggling, holding his father's hair tightly with his two little hands, sitting on his father's neck and looking down at his mother. Cub shaved Mu Yangling's face with his fingers to show his ridicule, and then the father and son ran out laughing, "Ha ha! You bastard, how dare you laugh at me?" Mu Yangling looked outside, only to realize that it was already very late, and the entire yard was full of sunlight. Mu Yangling got up with a blushing face. The father and son were already sitting at the dining table waiting for her. Mu Yangling felt a little guilty. "You haven't had breakfast yet." The father and son shook their heads together, and the little bear giggled. Mu Yangling didn't notice it well, and sure enough, Chi Heiren laughed and said, "We've already eaten, and we came to see you eat." Mu Yangling's head was full of black lines. What's so interesting about having breakfast? Chi Heiren just smiled and said nothing. Mu Yangling could only have breakfast under the watchful eyes of the father and son, and only after breakfast did he know that Chi Heiren lost his temper in the morning and sent everyone in the kitchen, from the chef to the vegetable washers, was tied up by him. Zhu Liang could only go to Mu Yangling. Even if he wanted to change the people in the kitchen, it was impossible to change everyone. He couldn't find so many people at the moment, and he felt that the people in the kitchen were pretty good. Injustice. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 696. Mu Yangling didn't agree immediately, but asked Zhu Liang to step down first, went to Chi Heiren, and said, "Xiong's supper menu was set by me, why did you take everyone from the kitchen?" Mu Yangling didn't believe that when Chi Heiren dealt with it, the people under him would not explain the reason, and Chi Heiren must have his reasons for handling it like this after knowing the whole story. Uncle Chi Heiren sat on the chair likewise, and said, "You can intercede with me." Mu Yangling said, "So you came here specifically to ask me to intercede for them?" "Why? There are only their three masters in this mansion, where their authority is placed, and no one neglects them. There is no need for Chi Heiren to put on a face for her." Chi Heiren snorted and said, "Anyway, you just need to intercede with Master." Could he tell Mu Yangling that this was an idea after his attack, that he wanted to make a face for Mu Yangling so willfully? Mu Yangling stared at him carefully, seeing that what he said was true, felt a little helpless, nodded and said, "Okay, I'll plead with you." Chi Heiren waved his hand and said, "For the sake of your sincerity, I will spare them," Chi Heiren said with a slightly cold look in his eyes, "but although there is no need to sell it, this matter can't be left alone. The chefs here have to deduct a 3-month monthly rule. They are all trained by the maids in the palace. Don't they think about what the master can't think of? Don't they dare to take a bowl of noodles when the master says they want to eat late at night? To fool grandpa. What's wrong with a bowl of noodles? The fresh old hen soup that has been simmered, with vegetables and eggs, what's wrong?" Mu Yangling said dissatisfiedly, "As you said, 3 dishes and 1 soup are served. Come on, can the little bear finish it? Not only is it a waste, but the nutrition may not be as good as a bowl of noodles. When you propose to make noodles for Xiao Xiong, Did the people in the kitchen propose other menus? I don't believe it. There is no better menu in the kitchen. They just see you as a bully, waste. You are a majestic prince afraid of wasting a few side dishes. There are only 3 masters in the house, how much can we eat? Zhu Liang is also confused, the people in charge dare to fool you like this. In a word, Mu Yangling's requirement for the servants is that they should perform their own duties, do their own work well, and execute her orders properly. But Qi Heiran's requirements are even higher, the slaves are only anxious about the master's urgency, if the master thinks of it, they have to do it immediately, if the master can't think of it, they have to remind. Examples are Fei Bei and Yan Mo. Both Fei Bei and Yan Mo can handle the matter between him and Fan Zijin very well, and they can always take care of them when they can't take care of them. But Qi Heiran obviously forgot that such a slave is as hard to find as a general, and it is impossible for all servants in the palace to be like Fei Bei and Yan Mo. Once Qi Heiran's punishment came out, none of the servants in the whole house dared to complain, his prestige went up to a higher level instead, and everyone respected Mu Yangling even more. Originally, there was only one mistress in the palace. Everyone could see the prince's love for the princess. In addition, Mu Yangling himself had means and prestige, so everyone always respected her. Mu Yangling is easy to get along with, and never beats or scolds his servants, so the atmosphere in the mansion has always been brisk. Qi Heiran's genius made the atmosphere in the mansion suddenly solemn, and the servants were all cautious when walking after returning to the capital. Other people came to Qi Mansion occasionally as guests, and when they saw this, they felt a little more respect for Mu Yangling. I thought he was born in the countryside, but I didn't expect that he had some ability to control him. Of course, that's for later. Now, when Mu Yangling enjoys the benefits directly, she only needs to say a word, and the people below can get things done quickly and efficiently. For example, she said, there are children and pregnant women on the road, so I don't know what medicinal materials to bring just in case. Someone brought Dr. Wang and asked about the medicinal materials that are often sick in the season and are usually needed for traveling. In less than an hour, a list was placed in front of Mu Yangling, which included everything from common medicinal materials to precious medicinal materials, and it also states what diseases and conditions will be used. Only after Mu Yangling handed in the list, the warehouse can open the warehouse to pick out the required medicinal materials. If there is no one in the house, the purchase will be done quickly. The price is fair and the quality of the things is high. What usually takes 3 days to complete can now be completed in 1 day. For another example, she said that it is best to eat fresh ingredients on Xioxia's road, and don't use dry food like before. In a blink of an eye, they could pack up a cart full of ingredients and cooking utensils. Zhu Liang also spent the whole night planning out the itinerary, trying to make sure they could find inns and post stations every time they rested. Otherwise, they would have to settle in some villages. In this way, they can buy fresh ingredients, and the accommodation has also been upgraded to several grades. In the evening, when Mu Yangling saw Qi Heiran who was running back profusely with his son on his back, he hugged his head and gave him a big kiss. Qi Heiran's face turned red immediately. He was looking at them innocently with a pair of round eyes, and immediately sat upright, glaring at Mu Yangling. Little Bear looked at his mother, then at his father, climbed onto his father's knee, hugged him and kissed him on the face. Qi Heiran had a helpless face, it was you who taught the child badly. Mu Yangling laughed out loud. What's so happy about it? After being married for many years, Aling rarely took the initiative. Mu Yangling talked about the changes in the mansion, and said, I didn't expect you to lose your temper, but the efficiency of the mansion has improved so much. In this way, we can still have several days of free time. Why don't we wait for us to clean up? Let's go out and play. That's what you made of them in the past. You don't need to go out to play. Pack up your things and start your journey. Go early, The time on the road will be more relaxed, and take care of little Xia. Mu Yangling thought for a while and said, this way we can set off in 3 days. The couple finally reunited and separated. Although they will meet again in about a month, Mu Yangling is still a little unhappy, and Chi Heiran is not in a good mood as before, but at night he pressed Mu Yangling and said, let's hurry up, might be able to conceive. All of Mu Yangling's sadness disappeared. The couple have been working hard to create a human being for the past 3 days, and Chi Heiran has to work hard to show his presence in front of little bear, so that he will not be unfamiliar with his father when he sees his father in the future. Thanks to the active efforts of the couple, Mu Yangling directed his servants to pack up the things that the two governments needed to bring, and the time for departure arrived, 6 days earlier than they had expected. Chi Heiran and Fan Zijian still have to arrange the frontier defense and make some arrangements, so they will start more than 10 days later, but they have calculated the distance. Even if they leave late, they can catch up with them before the convoy arrives in the capital. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 697. Mu Yangling and the others drove slowly all the way, focusing on comfort. It was already 32 days after they arrived outside the capital. Chi Heiran and the others caught up on the last day, and the two teams entered the capital together as one. Among all the convoys entering the city, this team may be the one that attracts the most attention. As soon as Chi Heiran and the others arrived at the gate of the city, the gatekeeper quickly ran down from the tower to welcome them in respectfully, and ordered, hurry up and inform the imperial palace, just say that King Rong has arrived. There's no need to notify, the miscellaneous family is here in person. A thin voice sounded from behind, and Eunuch Wan stood there with a flattering smile on his face, and behind him stood Eunuch Wei, who was also smiling. My lord, the emperor knows that you two are coming to Beijing today, so I asked my servants to wait at the gate of the city early in the morning. Eunuch Wan glanced sideways at Eunuch Wei, and Eunuch Wei hurriedly stepped forward and said, Queen, the Empress is worried that the concubine and the Duke's wife will be exhausted all the way, so she specially asked the slaves to wait here, let the concubine and the madam rest for a whole day, and then enter the palace tomorrow to say hello. Eunuch Wan is the chief eunuch next to Chi Ziyuan, while Eunuch Wei is in charge of the affairs of the Cunning Palace. The two eunuchs of the palace stay here waiting for the two of them. This honor is unprecedented, and it is unknown whether there will be no future ones. Many people on the sidelines at the gate of the city lamented that the emperor had shown too much favor to King Rongjun and Duke Angguo. Fan Zijian rode his horse back and took a look at Mrs. Xioxia. Seeing that her face was pale, he turned to Mu Yangling and said, Aling, I have to trouble you to send Mrs. Xia to the Duke's mansion so that I can settle the affairs in my mansion. Chi Heiran waved his hands generously. What's the matter? Hand over the cousin to Aling, you can rest assured. Mu Yangling also nodded and smiled. Don't worry, I will take good care of my cousin, and I will go back after you leave the palace. Chi Heiran nodded again and again. It's a big deal, our family will live in your Duke's mansion. Xiao Xia was startled. Regardless of her dizziness, she lifted the curtain of the car and said, Master, are we going to live in the Duke's mansion? Not going back to Fan Mansion. Fan Zijian nodded. I have sent someone back to Beijing to clean up the Duke's mansion in advance, you just need to live in it. Yeah, but we haven't gone to pay our respects to our parents yet. Mu Yangling couldn't think of these things, Chi Heiran wouldn't think about them, Fan Zijian could pretend not to know, but she couldn't keep silent. Fan Zijian said, I'll go to my parents and tell them, you just need to take care of your baby with peace of mind. Mrs. Xiao Xia wanted to say something, but Nanny Xia patted her hand lightly, and Mrs. Xia swallowed the words that came to her lips, and nodded slightly. Fan Zijian nodded slightly to Mu Yangling, and waved for them to leave first. When the convoy left, Fan Zijian ordered a servant and said, Go back and tell the master and wife that the lady's fetal breathing is not stable, so I will let her go back to the Duke's mansion to rest, and I will take her back to pay my respects when I am free. If it was before, Fan Zijan didn't mind living with his parents, and would find them uncomfortable from time to time, but now the world is not as big as his son, so it is best for Xiao Xia to have a good pregnancy condition. Seeing that the relationship between Fan Zijan and his uncle and aunt had deteriorated to such a degree, Qi Heiran's face was slightly gloomy. Fan Zijan has waved his hand to signal everyone to enter the palace. Qi Heiran rode his horse silently and walked on his left side, saying, "If it doesn't work, let Aling live in the Duke's mansion. With her here, uncle and aunt will always restrain themselves. As for the matter of bringing Xiao Xia out of the capital, although his uncle would dislike Aling, he did not dare to overstep his dignity." Fan Zijan shook his head slightly. "Don't worry, I didn't want to argue with them before, but now that I'm about to have a child, I won't let them go like before, and you don't want to meddle in my business all the time." Fan Zijan is very confident in his fighting power. In the past, his status was lower than Fan Siwen's and he never lost. Now his status is higher than Fan Siwen's. Even if Fan Siwen uses filial piety to suppress him, he is confident that he can defeat him. Different from Qi Heiran's real knives and guns, he prefers to follow the line and arrange it secretly. He had already won without the opponent noticing, not to mention, he had one of his biggest supporters, the emperor. Fan Zijan and Qi Heiran went to the palace to meet Qi Ziyuan, while Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia went to Angguo Gongfu. Angguo Gong's mansion is not far from Rongjun Prince's mansion, just next to the street. It is the mansion of the fourth prince of the former dynasty. The structures all have the exquisiteness of Jiangnan gardens, small bridges and flowing water, and rockery pavilions. Although they are not as big and rich as Qinxiangfu, they have a special charm. Most importantly, it is one of the best preserved and most beautiful gardens left by the previous dynasty. Fan Zijan wrote to the shop manager in the capital ahead of time, asking him to take someone to clean up the Duke's mansion. Everything is ready, and Mu Yangling just needs to arrange the personnel. After sitting in the carriage for more than a month, Xiao Xia felt that her bones were shattered by the bumps. When she went back to the inner room and lay on the bed, she felt that the bed was shaking. Mu Yangling arranged for her to stay, so he called all the servants in the mansion to arrange the personnel affairs. On the other side, Mrs. Xia was waiting for Mrs. Xia in the mansion, but she didn't see anyone for a long time, so she asked someone to watch, and when the servants went out, they brought back the slaves sent by Fan Zijan. Xiaoxi was slightly taken aback after hearing the servant's report, and asked, "The emperor gave Zijan the duke's mansion? Why didn't I know?" The servant lowered his head and said in a low voice, "I don't know, I just said it according to the order of the duke." The Xia family was silent for a while, and asked, "Will your Aunt Su accompany you when you come to Beijing this time?" "Aunt Su?" The servant shook his head in a daze. "Is there another Aunt Su in the house?" Xia's heart sank. Aunt Su was the concubine sent by Fan Siwen to Fan Zijan. She was a good concubine, but this person didn't even know who Aunt Su was, which showed Fan Zijan's attitude. It was a surprise to say that the servant Fan Zijan ordered happened to be a third-class servant in the mansion, who usually only served in the outer courtyard, and Aunt Su was sent to Zhu. Fan Zijan didn't even see her face, so she locked him up directly. "Tell her bluntly that his first child must be his son-in-law, and if he is safe, he will spare her life and ensure that she has no worries about food and clothing for the rest of her life." Add. Because of Fan Zijan's attitude towards Aunt Su and the fact that there is only one young Xia family in the mansion, naturally he will not talk about Aunt Su without eyesight, so that some servants in the outer court do not know that there is an additional Aunt Su in the mansion. "Where is the government office?" The servant's eyes were still blank. He didn't know, he was just a lowly servant. Before he was happy that the Duke had picked him, but now, he was only afraid. Xia's heart kept sinking. Did his son neglect her to such an extent? He even appointed such a servant to report. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 698. The Duke's mansion was requested by Fan Zijian and Qi Ziyuan before, asking him to be big enough and beautiful enough to move in with a bag, and he was also asked not to announce it first, and then formally decree the gift when he returned to the capital. As soon as Qi Ziyuan heard this request, he knew what he was guarding against. In fact, he couldn't understand the behavior of his uncle and aunt. It stands to reason that with such a promising son, shouldn't he live in harmony and share the prosperity and wealth with the family? So many things happen. As for the question of Fan Zijian's obsession, Qi Ziyuan subconsciously ignored it. Rong Xian saw that his heart was drifting to the sky, and he didn't mean to remind him. Both Qi Heiran and Fan Zijian were raised by the emperor as his sons. When Qi Ziyuan was just a general, he made arrangements for these two people. Although Qi Ziyuan is not bad, but in terms of feelings, he naturally gets along day and night, and Fan Zijian, who was raised by him, has a deeper relationship. Qi Ziyuan had circled several mansions for Fan Zijian a long time ago. He wanted to wait for him to come back and let him choose the one he likes as the Duke's mansion, but when he received his letter, he set up the conditions one by one, and wanted to be close to Heiran. But also beautiful and big enough, and able to move in, only the fourth prince's mansion of the previous dynasty is suitable. The fourth prince of the former dynasty was relatively capable among his many brothers, and he also had the heart to fight for the position. In addition, his mother and concubine were also favored, so when he divided the mansion, he directly chose a place not far from Qin Xiang's mansion. There, so the mansion is rich and elegant, and the stones, wood, flowers, plants, and trees are not ordinary goods. Qi Ziyuan asked Rong Xian to have a look, and after confirming that the layout and scenery were in line with Fan Zijian's preferences, he decided to designate Angguo Gong's mansion with a wave of his hand. In the fourth prince's mansion, it stands to reason that the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Works should grant officials residences, but Qi Ziyuan directly bypassed them and asked for several good mansion title deeds. The Ministry of Rights and Works didn't dare to ask, thinking that the emperor wanted to use these gardens as a palace farewell. The court or others used it, and handed it in honestly. Qi Ziyuan turned around and sent the land deed to Fan Zijian, and then Fan Zijian asked his people to clean up the house. Because that piece of house was nationalized, it was not given at this time, and it was all empty, so Fan Zijian's people came and went without being noticed, and they deliberately kept a low profile, and no one noticed. Therefore, apart from Rong Xian who had appreciated the house, no one knew that the Angguo Gong's mansion had been settled. Qi Ziyuan is also well behaved, afraid that the courtiers and Fan Siwen would say that Fan Zijian was arrogant and unfilial, so he moved into the Duke's mansion before he had a decree. After Fan Zijian entered the palace, he hurriedly issued a decree to grant the mansion to another country, and also issued a 7th grade pen from the Ministry of Rights teacher. The reason is that he neglected to record the imperial decree that the emperor bestowed on Angguo Gong's mansion, so that the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Industry have not done the handover until now, causing Angguo Gong to repair it at his own expense and take care of Angguo's mansion. There is a possibility of missing the record, but it is impossible to omit anything. It is impossible to omit the imperial decree. It is the imperial edict bestowed on the famous man Angguo Gong in front of the emperor. Everyone knows that it is false when they hear it, and they all sympathize with the one who was pulled out to take the blame. The official position is already small, and if you are sent down and demoted, you will lose your grade, and you don't know if you can still make it in this life. But the writer was not sad at all. He just left from the Ministry of Rights, and immediately packed up his things and took his family to Jinhua County to serve as a county captain. When the censor wanted to hear about the matter and leave his name in history, he found out that the writer had gone to Jinhua County to become a county captain of Beipan, and he was very angry. From the 7th rank to the 8th rank, it is indeed downgraded, but this is an obvious decline and a secret rise. The former is a pen master with no future. He may have worked in the capital for 10 years, but he is still a 7th rank. 13 taels of silver and a few who rise to live on, can be delegated to a high-ranking county as a magistrate, not only easy to achieve political achievements, easy to get promoted, but wealth alone can make more money than a pen post. Sure enough, the censor found Bidyashi, hoping that he could tell the truth and return the world to the world. The Bidyashi cried bitterly and repented. He killed himself because he was drunk and failed to record his will, which delayed Angwo good day. Yushi gritted his teeth with hatred, but there was nothing he could do. Without evidence, even if they heard about it, they would be reprimanded in the end, and there would be no trace left in history. The writer felt that these censors were full, and it was their family business that Nkuagong and his son fought in the arena. The emperor's willingness to help Nkuagong slap Fanyushi in the face was also the emperor's private matter, and it didn't hinder the national policy. What did you say? As soon as Fan Zijian came out of the palace, he went straight to Fan's mansion, euphemistically saying, "Greetings to my parents." Completed the duties and etiquette that should be done one by one, then ignored Fan Siwen's black face and patted his ass back to Nkuagong's mansion. Fan Siwen was so angry, but there was nothing he could do about it. The emperor helped him cover it up. What could he do with Fan Zijian? Fan Siwen turned to look for Mrs. Xia, and said, "Mrs. Xia is pregnant. After all, it is Zijian's first child. Go back and bring her close to the mansion to take good care of her. My eldest grandson in Fan's mansion must be in Fan's mansion anyway, it's good to be born." Fan Siwen frowned seeing Xia's head bowed and said nothing. "Did you hear me talking to you?" Xia raised her head and glanced at him, but remembered what Fan Zijian said to her just now. "Since I was a child, he thought that I was the son of the concubine, and Fan Zixiao was the son of the concubine, so Fan Zixiao was wronged and blindly favored him. He was the only one, fighting with him, saying he was making decisions for me and Heiran, but in fact it was just your selfishness. I hated your fights the most since I was a child. Obviously it was just a matter of 2 sentences, mine son, even if he can't be like Little Treasure and Little Bear, he definitely can't grow up in such an environment. Mother, he is also my heart, my blood, he is naturally more noble than others, why should he accept the uncle's son here?" Angry. "Your father won't embarrass your child because of Zixiao's child. I'm still in the mansion." Fan Zijian sneered, "Does mother believe this? If mother can get rid of selfishness and only care for me and the child, you can go to the duke's mansion to take care of Xiao Xia. If not, my son will come to greet you on the 15th day of every month. I will also bring Xiao Xia over to visit you in my spare time, but I won't let my mother worry about my rear house." Xiaoxi has always felt that Fan Zijian is her son. Even if the trouble is ugly now, he is still her son, but at that time Fan Zijian's indifferent eyes told her clearly that a son can abandon his mother, because a son will have his own son. Xiaox did not agree to Fan Siwen's words. She was at a loss now. Fan Siwen frowned, seeing his wife looking at her in a daze, and then realized that she also had grey hair at the temples. Fan Siwen paused, feeling pity in his heart, and sighed slightly, "Forget it, it's up to me, go talk to Zijian." The incident at the mansion of Duke Angwo made Fan Siwen a joke in the whole city. Fan's mansion successfully attracted everyone's attention, but those who cared found that Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling still lived in Qi's mansion after returning to Beijing. The door-to-door was rejected, and people who had changed their minds couldn't help but think too much. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 699. In Nkuagong's mansion, Mother Xia was teaching Xiao Xia, "It's for your own good that the Duke didn't let you go back to the mansion. The relationship between the Duke and his wife is not good. It is inevitable that you will be caught in it. It is said that you are a daughter-in-law. It should be reconciled between the two sides, but what the master and wife did before was too ugly, and they almost detained you in the capital. If the princess was not strong, she would have brought you out. You just see that you are now locked up in the Juzhu mansion, and so, will there still be a place for you to stand in this mansion in a few years? When Mother Xia mentioned this, she was full of anger. She knew that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law rarely get along well, but her young lady is docile and obedient, and she can't even get along well with her young lady. That's a problem with Xia's character. What's more, the Xia family had clearly shown that they were very satisfied with their young lady before. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were talking and laughing, but they turned their faces when they said they turned their faces. From then on, Madame Xia didn't have much affection for Mrs. Xia. Seeing that the Duke wanted to support his wife, Madame Xia didn't want Mrs. Xia to be angry with her big belly, so she taught her, Master Xia, if you say you are not feeling well, you can just lie down at home, and the stewards and I will take care of the affairs below. If you are in trouble, you can ask the princess for help. Just raise your baby with peace of mind and give birth to your little son. Fortunately, the master has a bad reputation in Beijing. Who doesn't know that he is not kind? Even if he says that you and the Duke are not filial, there is the emperor above. In a word, madam, you should eat and drink, just like in Juzhu, don't worry about your in-laws. Xiao Xia saw that Nanny Xia was swearing. She had always believed in her nurse's words, and under her repeated persuasion, she really felt relieved and went to sleep with peace of mind. Fan Zijin nodded slightly when he came back, and was very satisfied with his wife's calmness. At least she wasn't as bluffing as she was on the road today. The next day, Mu Yangling turned here in a carriage to pick up Mrs. Xia into the palace, and the queen asked someone to step up to pick them up. Xiao Xia looked at Mu Yangling nervously, and Mu Yangling smiled and said, the queen is very gentle, so you don't have to worry. Xiao Xia smiled cautiously. Although it was not the first time for her to meet the queen, she still couldn't help being nervous. Li Jinghua was holding Xiao Bao standing in front of the hall waiting for them. When Xiao Bao saw Xiao Xiang, he couldn't help but pursed his lips and waved at him excitedly. Xiao Xiang let go of his mother's hand and flew over like a missile. Bao hugged each other, and the two children laughed happily. Li Jinghua couldn't help smiling when she saw it. Little bear has grown up too, half a head taller than my brother. Only now did Xiaobao realize that his younger brother was actually taller than him, so he pouted and said, Queen, I want to eat 2 bowls of rice tonight. Li Jinghua was happy to hear that, nodded and said, as long as you are not picky about food, you will definitely be able to catch up with your brother. She raised Xiaobao carefully, and unknowingly let the child develop the habit of picky eaters. Although Xiao Xiang loves meat, under Mu Yangling's training, he eats all kinds of vegetables. In addition, he inherited his father's physique and is tall and strong. Although he is 1 year younger than Xiaobao, he is still taller than him. Hi! A 3-year-old looks like a 5-year-old with a physique. Li Jinghua asked people to take the 2 children to the side hall to play, leaving only Wen Kui to wait on him. Seeing that Xiao Xia's face was slightly pale, her hands and feet were thin, and her 6-month-old belly was only slightly protruding, so she couldn't help feeling a little worried. It's been 6 months. Xiao Xia rubbed her belly and said, in 8 days, it will be 7 months. Li Jinghua frowned, it's too small, can't it eat? Xiao Xia lowered her head slightly, I don't have a good appetite, so I don't eat much. Fortunately, there is a medicinal diet prescribed by Dr. Wang, and the nutrition can keep up. Li Jinghua nodded slightly, even so, we still need to eat more. The more the child eats, the more he sucks. You are so thin now, how can you use your strength when you give birth? Fortunately, it's a lot more convenient when I'm back in the capital, and I'll ask the director of the Imperial Hospital to show you. Li Jinghua sighed and said, the emperor only has Xiaobao so far, so he attaches great importance to his heirs. Zijin, like Heiran, was raised by the emperor as a child. He told me before that he wanted me to take good care of you. You have been in Canaan all the time, and I can't help you, but fortunately, Aling is capable, and she has shared a lot for my elder sister-in-law." During the speech, Fan Zijan and Chi Heiran were actually compared. Xiao Xia's heart was beating wildly, and she couldn't help looking up at Mu Yangling, but seeing Mu Yangling's usual look, she said to Li Jinghua, "Don't worry, sister-in-law, she looks thinner now, but her body is actually better than before. It's just that I haven't recovered from my hurry." Only then did Li Jinghua nod in satisfaction. "I can't take care of you in the palace, so you should pay more attention outside the palace. Zijan is 2 months older than Heiran, the difference between the eldest sons should not be too big, otherwise there will be a big difference in the future. It's not good to play together." Then he said to Xiao Xia, "Now you just care about raising your baby in peace, the big things are not important to you yourself, the things in the mansion are left to Ling, and the outside things are left to Zijan, and if Zijan can't handle it, you have to do it. As for the emperor, this is Zijan's first child, and the emperor is also looking forward to it." Xiao Xia couldn't help but be happy in her heart. This is the queen's explicit statement that the emperor will make decisions for her and the duke. When Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia left in the afternoon, these words were also spread to Fan Siwen's ears, and he could only stop what he was doing. The emperor's attitude is obvious, and he is not allowed to intervene in the affairs of Zijan's heirs at this time. Fan Siwen was both happy and angry. He was happy that his son was favored by the emperor so much, but he was annoyed that he was Zijan's father, yet he was threatened by the emperor, which was extremely aggrieved. The people in the capital who had been watching the jokes also put their minds back, began to correct their attitudes, and focused their attention on the government. "Have you seen that the emperor has meddled? Watch the jokes again, and be careful not to burn yourself." So, everyone began to discuss various matters about conferring the crown prince and welcoming the Dali envoys. Xiao Xia raised her baby at home with peace of mind, eating and exercising according to the schedule made by Mu Yangling and imperial physician Wang. Her complexion gradually turned rosy, flesh began to appear on her body, and her stomach blew up like a balloon. Not only Mu Yangling, even Fan Zijan and Chi Heiran breathed a sigh of relief. She began to look forward to the child in her womb. On the second day after Mu Yangling left the palace, Li Jinghua announced her into the palace again, and asked her to bring the little bear with her. Xiao Bao deliberately ran back during the lunch break, took Xiao Xiong's hand and said to Mu Yangling, "Auntie, can I take my brother to class?" Mu Yangling stroked his head and said, "My brother hasn't started reading yet, and he won't be able to understand it even if he goes there. In case he troubles you, don't go." Little Bear pouted disapprovingly, grabbed Xiao Bao's hand and did not let go, and Xiao Bao was also reluctant to part with Little Bear, looking at Li Jinghua and Mu Yangling eagerly. Li Jinghua persuaded, "Let them go. There is no literary class in the afternoon, but martial arts class and music. The gentlemen mostly tell them moral stories, and they don't need to read. The prince does not need to take the imperial examination, and Xiaobao is destined to become the emperor in the future, so Qi Xiaoyuan arranged for him other than the imperial arts and the necessary books. The other courses are mostly to cultivate his interests, and he is still young, so the literature class it only takes up the time in the morning, and the afternoon is devoted to other courses. Sometimes the teacher will tell them various stories, and sometimes teach them the 6 arts that they can learn at this age. The time and content are very broad. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 700. Mu Yangling thought that this was the imperial palace, and she was relieved that Xiao Xiong would follow Xiaobao, and since she was talking to Li Jinghua, it was not suitable for Xiao Xiong to stay here, so she nodded and agreed. Xiaobao and Xiao Xiong immediately ran out holding hands in excitement, and the serving maids and servants hurriedly followed behind. The 2 sisters-in-law watched the 2 children disappear before turning back. They looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. Everyone is different, but the hearts of parents who worry about their children are the same in this world. Li Jinghua pulled Mu Yangling's hand, said, let's go in and talk, let them play. There is someone in Shanghai Yuan who will take care of you personally, everything will be fine. Li Jinghua approached Mu Yangling to ask about the situation of Princess Duan Yuking of Dali. The emperor attached great importance to Dali's ownership, and Duan Yuking made the head of the 4 concubines as soon as he came up, which shows that Qi Ziyuan attaches great importance to it. Although Li Jinghua has a taste in his heart, he knows the overall situation and must do things beautifully, not only to shock the feudal kingdom, but also to show his majesty to the world. It is impossible for her to arrange Xianfei's palace casually. It must conform to the etiquette and Duan Yuking's wishes, but she doesn't know Duan Yuking's preferences, so she can only ask Mu Yangling. Of course, she also wanted to inquire about the news. Mu Yangling told about Duan Yuking's temperament and some hobbies, and when Li Jinghua wrote it down solemnly, he sighed for her in his heart, leaned into her ear and said, sister-in-law, Duan Yuking hurt her uterus when she fled, and she will never be hurt for the rest of her life. There will be a pregnancy. Li Jinghua stared at Mu Yangling with wide eyes. Mu Yangling nodded slightly and said, she is also weak, you can take care of her as much as you can, her natal family is far away in Dali, and she belongs to the country, and her family members are not allowed to enter Beijing without an edict. Li Jinghua stretched out his hand to hold Mu Yangling's hand, his eyes were slightly red, and said, you are the only one who thinks about me at this time. Sitting in the position of queen, Li Jinghua is naturally very beautiful, but she also bears a lot of pressure. She accepts all of this calmly, because she doesn't think that there is any queen in the past who can have the blessing of her. The emperor loved her deeply, and she gave birth to her eldest son safely, and her son was about to become the crown prince. The emperor never delayed filling the harem for her and Xiaobao. Li Jinghua felt that even if she could not become the empress dowager in the future, as long as with the friendship and memories of the past few years, this life is enough. But this does not mean that she has no grievances. Mother Yixingxia is not so easy to say. Managing the harem is just a trivial matter for her. She also needs to help Qi Ziyuan deal with the officials and family members of the court officials, and fight for more rights and interests for Qi Ziyuan. Benefit. It is also the most difficult thing to improve the etiquette system of the palace, and it also exhausts her the most. The 5 generations of the Qi family have been mud-legged. Qi Ziyuan's great-grandfather was a scholar. His grandfather had just passed the Jinshi examination and became an official, and he only stopped at the 5th rank. Qi Feng relayed to the 4th rank. It can be said that people like them have the background is good, but when Qi Ziyuan became the emperor, he couldn't make mistakes in etiquette, otherwise he would lose face in front of the ministers. What majesty would he have in the future? But the most complete etiquette is the aristocratic family. Every dynasty and every generation, the aristocratic family will be used after the change of the new dynasty. Why? The family used the family as the emperor to gain the support of the same family, but the mud-legged son used the family as the emperor because of the prestige and the heritage of the family. Among other things, every step the emperor took when worshipping the ancestors was calculated. From the start to the upper step, how many steps to take, the position of each step, and the length. Does Qi Ziyuan know? He didn't know, so he had to be taught. But he is unwilling to reuse the family, which brings many disadvantages. He is comfortable using it now, but it will bury many troubles for future generations. But this doesn't mean that Qi Ziyuan doesn't need people from aristocratic families. As long as he is talented, he will let anyone go. He will also send people from aristocratic families to important positions, but it is impossible for him to specifically support the aristocratic family. Qi Ziyuan has been enthroned for more than a year, not only did not reuse the family, but weakened them step by step. This undoubtedly annoyed the family, and secretly dug holes for Chi Xiuyuan. Chi Xiuyuan has indeed made a lot of jokes in this year. But he has a high level of psychological quality, his face does not change, and he accepts it calmly. Outsiders only think that the emperor is thick-skinned, but Li Jinghua knows how Chi Xiuyuan came back to her step by step to learn those red tapes, how to make the old court ladies. The old servant taught him bit by bit with a thorn. Chi Xiuyuan treated her with deep affection, so how could she not do something for him? Chi Xiuyuan was unwilling to deal with the aristocratic family, so she stepped forward to deal with him on his behalf. For him, she even took this opportunity to write to the Li family and asked Li Jian, the head of the Li family, to come. One must know that Li Jian can be regarded as her enemy. Her father and brother are disabled, and half of the suffering she suffered when she was a child is thanks to him. After she became a queen, Li Jian hinted more than once that she wanted to become an official and move her family to the capital, but she didn't agree. Seeing the family members flattering her father and brother who had been abandoned in the courtyard all the time, her heart was more than happy, but now, she wants to suppress those hatreds and pleasures, and cooperate with Li Jian again, just for her husband. And the ministers in the court always try their best to fill the emperor's harem with women. This time, Duan Yuking's appointment as a concubine means that the opening of the harem will be opened. After her, more women will enter the harem. Li Jinghua is under a huge burden, the pressure, but no one can say. Chi Xiuyuan, he himself is as tired as a dog, and when he comes back to her every day, he has to accompany Xiaobao and exchange some current affairs with her, or it's the time for couples to bond, so he doesn't have time to listen to her complaints. Nor would she say those spoiling things to him. To her confidants, she is the master, and they are slaves. After hearing her complaints, it is just a few boring words of comfort to her. This kind of thing could have been confided to family members or girlfriends, but her family is not here, and her mother is weak, telling them is just to cause worry. As for girlfriends, Li Jinghua said that she has never had such things. Seriously, she would be able to have a few words with Mu Yangling. Li Jinghua's eyes were red, she wiped her tears and said, I originally asked you to enter the palace for my reference, but I didn't expect you to listen to so much nonsense. Mu Yangling didn't expect that the Emperor Chi Xiuyuan could still make people laugh. It was because of the ridiculous reason that his face turned blue for a while. Sister-in-law, you should have told us these things long ago. The Emperor represents the majesty of a country. When the Emperor makes a fool of himself, it means Daki makes a fool of himself, and all the subjects of Daki make a fool of himself together. When they laugh at Big Brother, they are laughing at themselves. I have never seen such an idiot. Aristocratic family, huh, aristocratic family. Li Jinghua looked at Mu Yangling, who was gnashing his teeth in surprise, and thinking of Chi Heiran's character, he quickly stopped her and said, you can't tell fourth uncle about this, if fourth uncle's temper rages in court. Mu Yangling rolled his eyes and said, sister-in-law, don't worry, Heiran won't make a fuss in the hall. As for whether he will make a fuss outside, I don't know. All of Li Jinghua's troubles, grievances, sorrows, and sadness disappeared, only worries remained. Fourth uncle don't make trouble. Li Jinghua tried to persuade Mu Yangling to keep this matter in her stomach and not tell Chi Heiran, but before she could persuade her, a court lady ran in a panic. Your Majesty, the eldest prince and the little prince and Lu Xiaolang, you are fighting. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 701. Li Jinghua turned pale with shock. She had just boasted to Mu Yangling that nothing would happen in the palace. She stood up with a huh and asked, are the first prince and the little prince injured? Mu Yangling also looked anxiously at the maid. The maid said with a strange expression, well, I got a little injury. How old is Lu Xiaolang? Mu Yangling asked quickly. 6 years old, the maid hurriedly said, he is the eldest prince's companion, the grandson of Grand Tutor Lu. But Mu Yangling couldn't listen anymore. It's too much for a 6-year-old kid to bully a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old kid. Mu Yangling grabbed the corner of her skirt and rushed to Shangling Garden regardless of etiquette. The queen hurriedly stopped her. How is it proper to run over like this? Why don't you hurry up and announce the sedan chair? The last sentence was said by Chong Wenkui. When the two of them stepped into Shangling Garden, they heard a group of children howling. Mu Yangling rushed in first, and saw Xiaobao holding the bear and standing up straight. The other children were either sitting or lying down on the ground, crying with eyes closed, with more or less minor injuries on his face. Mu Yangling opened his mouth wide at once. It's not like his son was being bullied, but his son was bullying others. She rushed to turn Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang around, and checked whether they were injured. Except that Xiaobao's clothes were splashed with ink, they were not injured at all. When the little bear saw his mother, he felt aggrieved for a moment, and the tears he had been holding back burst out with a wow, hugging his mother's thigh and crying uncontrollably. Seeing this, Xiaobao pursed the corners of his mouth, and looked at Lu Xiaolang who was lying on the ground in displeasure. Mu Yangling hurriedly coaxed him in a low voice, "Why are you crying? Mother is here. If someone bullies you, tell mother." The gentleman who was waiting on the side suppressed the urge to roll his eyes. Who could bully Xiao Shizi? All the children in this room are told to beat him to the ground, okay? The queen looked at the people present indifferently, and asked, "Is this how you serve people? Didn't you see that the little gentlemen are all crying? Why don't you help them up?" The people who had been suppressed by Xiaobao and dared not move came forward to hug the young gentlemen one after another, or check their injuries, or coax them patiently. Mu Yangling took a serious look at Mr. Lu Xiaolang, and seeing that his face was bruised, she secretly compared the size of the fist, and confirmed that it belonged to her son. Mu Yangling glanced at the maid who reported the letter, and understood why she had a weird face. Judging from the situation at the scene, the eldest prince and the young prince fought with Mr. Lu Xiaolang and others, but it was not the older one who bullied the younger one, but the younger one. Press down on the big hit. Mu Yangling didn't want to favor his son, so he patted his head and asked, "Did you beat Lu Xiaolang and the others?" Little Xiang looked at Mu Yangling with round eyes and nodded slightly. "It's wrong to fight, just say sorry to your brothers." Xiao Xiangjimin tightened his mouth, looked at Mu Yangling stubbornly, refused to apologize, and even looked at Mr. Lu Xiaolang viciously, wanting to rush up and beat him up again. When Mr. Lu Xiaolang saw someone supporting him, he let go of his hand covering his stomach, pointed at the little bear and shouted, "Young man, if you say you can't do it, then do it. If you have the ability to argue with me, it's a shame that you still come to Shanglai Yuan, don't you even understand the basics of a gentleman speaks with his mouth and doesn't move his hands, or you can't speak at all, you're dumb." Mu Yangling was furious, grabbed the little bear who had rushed out, imprisoned him in his arms, looked down at Mr. Lu Xiaolang, and said coldly, "You call yourself a gentleman? This is the first time I've heard that a gentleman can. You are as unscrupulous as you are a child. I don't care about you, but I really want to talk to your grandmother about what is wrong with tongue." After finishing speaking, Mu Yangling turned to stare at his son and said, "You are also stupid. He said you, so you must answer him. You will be barked by dogs while walking on the road. Don't you stop and answer twice." The faces of the people present suddenly brightened. Mr. Lu Xiaolang was 6 years old and precocious, so he naturally knew that Mu Yangling was scolding him, but he couldn't say a word of rebuttal under Mu Yangling's cold eyes. Mu Yangling didn't even look at him, turned around and left with the little bear in his arms. Lu Xiaolang, who was crushed and kicked by her, was shocked to realize that his back was soaked, and suddenly felt wronged, and cried out with a wow. As soon as he cried, The child who had stopped crying began to cry again. The queen glanced at everyone, took Xiaobeo's hand, turned around and left, and ordered everyone to send the young gentleman back, and the afternoon class would not be held. Mu Yangling left with a sullen face. She thought it was her son who bullied someone, so she wanted him to apologize. If it is a normal dispute, even if the son is right, if he hits someone, Mu Yangling will hit him to apologize. After all, he hit someone. But listening to what Lu Xiaolang said just now, it was obvious that he was deliberately provoking Little Xiong. Little Xiong spoke late. She and Qi Heiran have been taking care of him carefully, for fear that he would feel inferior because of this and would not open his mouth even more. Did such a thing. Mu Yangling said that he was not joking when he said that he would talk to Lu Xiaolang Jun's grandmother, but he really planned to do so. She wants to tell the whole capital that even if the little bear can't speak, they can't bully or talk about it. Mu Yangling returned to Cunning Palace with a sullen face. Li Jinghua patted her hand and said, Mr. Lu Xiaolang is the eldest grandson of Taifu Lu, and he is rarely famous, so the emperor appointed him to be the prince's companion, but now it seems that there is a problem with her character. 6 years old, not too young, Li Jinghua is also from a family, knowing that the children of the family are precocious. When she was 6 years old, she was able to sit with her mother in the flower hall and listen to the servants' report on family affairs. The Lu family is more powerful than the Li family, and the rules are also strict. Lu Xiaolang is also the eldest grandson, so he must not be ignorant of world affairs. The queen suspects that someone is instigating this. Mu Yangling didn't think about it so much, she simply thought that this was Lu's tutor, so she pulled Xiaobeo over to ask what happened carefully. Xiaoxiang has always been the king of children. When he was in the capital, Xiaobeo always let him pick the good things first, and his mother and aunt also loved him. When he arrived in Qianan, the huge Zhezhu, he was the only child who had the most honorable status. Let alone in the mansion, even if he went out, everyone nodded and bowed respectfully to him. Although Xiaoxiang has not developed a domineering character, he has always held his head high and raised his chin slightly, just like a miniature version of Qi Heiran, confident and flamboyant. He can't speak at the age of 3, but his parents keep telling him that it's because he has another great talent, and his parents have always been very happy, and the servants around him have never shown any strange behavior, and they are respectful to him. Yujia also envied and flattered him, so he was never ashamed of not being able to speak. Instead, he felt that the later he spoke, the stronger his talent, and he was very proud. But who in Shangling Garden is not the pride of heaven? Xiaobeo's status is the most honorable, and even though he is only 4 years old, he has always been calm and prudent. Not only did Bao accompany him with a smile, but he also taught him how to use a pen to practice handwriting, gently dipped the ink on his face with a handkerchief, poured water for him, and played with him. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 702. It's fine if there is no comparison, but after the comparison, everyone realizes how alienated the eldest prince is to them. It's not good for everyone to get angry with the eldest prince, so they can only transfer it to the little bear. Plus the little bear has long arms and legs, so it doesn't look like a 3-year-old child at all. It's about the same as a 5-year-old child, but he can't even speak at such an age. Can be selected as the eldest prince's companion, which one is not intelligent? Not to mention being able to compose poems at the age of 3, none of those present could read less than 100 characters at the age of 3, and among them, Lu Xiaolang, Lu Yan, was the most intelligent. Zhang Dong, in addition, his ancestor was the prince and Taifu, and his father was also known for his talent. He was the most brilliant among the many companions, and he was also the leader of everyone. Lu Yan looked down on Little Bear, but boasted of his talent. He didn't say it clearly, but wrote a poem during the break to mock Little Bear's inability to speak. Little Bear can't understand, but it doesn't mean that little treasure can't understand. Little treasure didn't want little bear to be hurt, so he just gave Luyan a warning look to tell him to be cautious, but Huanan, the grandson of Taiwei Hua, said directly to little bear, "He called you a fool." Little bear is not really stupid. He looked at Xiaobao after he realized it. He was only careful about Xiaobao's words. Xiaobao didn't want to deceive little bear, so he could only nod, but advised him not to do anything. He would teach Luyan for him later. Little bear didn't know how to settle accounts behind his back, and after confirming that Luyan had indeed scolded him, he rushed towards him with his fists pumped. "My father said that in a war, we should make use of our strengths and avoid our weaknesses. Fighting is the same as fighting." They can't understand what he said, but the value of force is high. He directly uses his strengths to attack the opponent's weaknesses. He directly hits his mouth so that he can't open. Let's see what else he scolds. Luyan didn't expect little bear to start beating him without saying a word. He yelled and scolded him at the same time. After all, he was only 6 years old. How could he maintain his polite words when he was panicked, and directly threatened little bear, "You know who my grandfather is? Is it? If you dare to do anything again, I will not be polite." Then it became, "Stop it, you big fool, big dumb." Xiaobao stood aside, his face turned blue. He stopped the servant's movement to pull the two of them away, and let Xiao Xiong press down on Luyan and beat him. But Luyan's popularity is not forged. When he evaded, it affected everyone, so the flames of war escalated. Seeing that Xiao Xiong was besieged by several children, Xiaobao also joined in. No one dared to hit him, but when the pen and ink flew around, it also affected everyone. So suffered a little injury. In the end, the little bear and Xiaobao beat people to the ground and ended. It was no small matter that the eldest prince brought the young son of Rongjun's mansion to fight in Shangling Garden. When the maid went to inform the queen, the emperor also received the report from the servant. At the time of canonizing the prince, this matter is big but small, and it is small but big. It depends on how the parents handle it. Qi Xiaoyuan was silent for a while, and finally planned to wait and see what happened. If he decided the nature of the matter forcefully, although he could overturn the matter, he would inevitably lose his tongue and let Xiaobao have a reputation of bullying and cruelty. Wait and see and let them figure it out on their own. Thinking about it this way, Qi Xiaoyuan dismissed the servant as if he didn't know about it. Although he made up his mind to ignore it, he couldn't just watch his family being wronged, so he picked up Qi Heiran, who was sitting upright discussing political affairs below. When he came out, he drove him out directly, saying, "It's getting late, take your wife and son back directly, so as not to catch cold when you go back late." Everyone looked up at the hourglass. It was only now, around 4 p.m., and it was August again, so what kind of cold did they suffer? Although Qi Heiran was also confused, he didn't ask any questions in front of everyone, and ran to Cunning Palace to pick him up. Mu Yangling had already calmed down at this time. Although his face was still a little dull, but he couldn't tell if he didn't look carefully, but the little bear was nestling in his mother's arms, and when he saw his father, he pursed his mouth and stretched out his hands to him. Hug. Qi Heiran saluted Li Jinghua briefly, then hugged the little bear in his arms, and said to Li Jinghua, "Sister-in-law, I will take Aling and the little bear back first." Li Jinghua thought that Qi Heiran already knew. After all, he was at Qi Xiaoyuan's place. What could be hidden from Qi Xiaoyuan in this palace? He nodded hurriedly and said, "Hurry up and go back. Xiaobao will take a rest tomorrow, and I will let him go out of the palace to play with Xiao Xiong." He looked at Xiao Xiong lovingly again, and praised him, "Little Xiong is a smart boy, don't take what others say to heart." Qi Heiran was confused and was about to ask, but Mu Yangling had already got up to leave, so he could only swallow his words temporarily. Not long after the carriage of Rongjun Prince's mansion left the palace, there was a loud shout from inside. It is said that it also alarmed the people riding on horses in the same street at that time. He fell to the ground, and when he was in doubt, King Rong pulled the curtain of the car with a shua, jumped out of the carriage vigorously, snatched a guard's horse, and galloped away. In just a few breaths of time, Chi Heiran rode his horse and disappeared. Before everyone recovered from the fright, the curtain of the car was pulled open again, and a beautiful and refined woman stretched out her head, and pointed at King Rong, who was leaving. The back shouted loudly, "Chi Heiran, come back to me." The elegant and refined beauty instantly collapsed in everyone's hearts, leaving only a voice that pierced the eardrums. Seeing that Chi Heiran's back disappeared, Mu Yangling put down the curtain of the car helplessly, and ordered the leading guards, "Take a few people to chase after the prince, and protect him no matter what." Those aristocratic families have rich backgrounds, and they must have people with strong martial arts in their hands, so it is better to take some precautions. As soon as the carriage of Rongjun Palace left the street, all kinds of rumors flew to all parts of the capital. Just after Mu Yangling returned to the Qi mansion, King Rongjun quarreled with his concubine and rode away angrily. The rumors that the concubine shouted at the prince regardless of her dignity spread all over the sky. Talk about the back houses of those super rank, first rank, and second rank officials. The women all thought that Mu Yangling didn't know how to be blessed when he was blessed. Such a good husband even quarreled with him. Now where can I find a young and handsome man who is powerful and doesn't take concubines? And the men generally feel that King Rongjun has risen once, and finally he is no longer afraid of his guilt. They must know that he is an example of not taking concubines and affectionate, which makes them very distressed. The regular wife at home often looks at him with sad eyes looking at them. They kept mentioning Princess Rongjun, implying that they would be happy if they had 1/3 of the happiness of Princess Rongjun. Haha, now you see, Rongjun Wang finally quarreled with Rongjun Wangfei. Let's see if you still say that he is deeply affectionate. Men's gossip is no less than women's, and they are also very curious about what Princess Rongjun did to anger Chi Heiran, and they have a unique advantage. It is much easier to inquire about news, so many people have sent people to tell them, staring at Rongjun Wang to see if he ran to the brothel in anger. He must explore the deep-seated reasons.